Alright, welcome to VTOL VR. This is going to be a quick start guide. This is VR Josh here. I'm just going to tell you how to get flying in the air. There's a much better full tutorial built into the game, but this is just to help you get up in the air and experience flight in VR. So the first thing to always note is whenever you're in the menus, if you need to reposition, like for example, if your head is through the ceiling, you just look at your left wrist, put your finger over the recenter seat button, and click recenter. Let me lower the game volume. Yeah, this game can get quite loud, so if you're streaming or recording, it might be worth making sure that the game audio isn't overpowering. It's nice to hear it loud, you know, jet engines are awesome, really loud, but it is a very loud game, just be warned. Okay, so once you get seated comfortably, and this is a seated game, so make sure you have a comfortable seat to sit in. Make sure you're recentered exactly where you want to be. Hit start. We'll get ourselves over to a pilot. You might have to create one if you haven't already, but if you have, you just go select your pilot. Select a jet. We're going to start with the VTOL craft. Actually, yeah, we'll do the VTOL craft. It's the default one. It can be a little complicated because it's got vertical takeoff options, but we're just gonna worry about forward takeoff today, since that's the simpler way to get up in the air. We're not going to do the campaign. We're going to go to quick flight, and we're going to do free flight. Again, if you do the campaign, there is a bunch of tutorial options that you can go through. There's this whole loadout system in the game as well, where you can choose weapons, you can choose the amount of flares and fuel you want. We're not going to worry about that. We're just going to go free flight during the day over on your left here and click launch. All right. Loading in. The other thing to remember is this is your last chance here to reposition your seat. So if you do want to reposition your seat before you get into a mission, make sure that you're generally where you want to be and recenter. Typically it's good to have these yellow handles on the seat right around your hips. That's a good indicator of where you should be. You grab the helmet, plop it on, and you'll load in. I'm going to close this window for now. Actually, let me make sure it's recording properly. Sometimes we get some issues with VR games recording in odd ways. Okay, I think all is well. So we'll set that over there, and all right, we're in the aircraft. Power is off. We're starting from scratch, basically. The first thing to always remember is look to your right and turn on main battery. That's the first option. Okay, so now the main battery is on. We have electricity for everything. You want to go to the APU, which is like the auxiliary power unit. It's basically a generator in the aircraft that lets you power things like turning on the engines, turning on screens, and everything else. So the first thing you want to do after you get the battery on is turn on the APU. And again, all this is done with your hands. You basically put your finger over it till it vibrates and you get the little indicator, and then you click to grab, and then you pull forward or backwards, up or down. Some of them you have to twist. Anyways, that's generally how everything is interacted with inside the aircraft. Once the APU is on, it'll rev up. Once the RPMs are pretty much maxed out, you go to engine 1, flip up the cover, turn engine 1 on. Just do one at a time. The RPMs will kick up, and then they'll go back down to idle. So give it a minute to spool up. Once you get used to this, you can do some of these tasks at the same time, but for now we're just going to do one at a time really quickly. Okay, the engines have idled. Now we can go to engine 2, turn engine 2 on. If you do both engines at the same time, I think you'll stall them, and you might stall the APU as well, because it can only produce so much power, and it uses the APU power to start the engine, basically is how it works. So now that we have both engines up and running and they're both down to idle, we can turn off the APU because it's not necessary and it burns extra fuel. Once you have the engines running, the engines do the same thing the APU does. They produce additional electricity for the systems. So you can also turn down the covers so you don't accidentally turn off your engines mid-flight. You have to leave the battery on though, so make sure you leave the battery on, otherwise you lose power to everything. Next, we want to turn the HUD on. As you'll see, there's the HUD. The HMCS power is your head-mounted display, and to turn on the head-mounted display, you reach to the right side of your head, you'll feel a vibration, and then you click, and it comes down. And now if I look over to the left or right, you can see I've got a display wherever I look, which is very useful. The other thing is you have night vision. I think it's up on the top. I'd have to remember exactly where. I think it's no, not there. I can't remember exactly. Oh wait, is it? Ah, it's the top middle. Okay. So if you turn on night vision and it's overpowering like this, just top middle of your head, click to disable it. Yeah, it's an easy place to accidentally click. So just remember, it's top middle of your head. You'll feel the vibration, and then the right side again is the head-mounted display. Okay, so now that we've got that power on, you want to turn your screens on, which is done by the bottom left on each screen. Has a little switch. Just click and rotate on each one. I usually put the navigation GPS on this one. You don't have to, but it's an easy place to see your map, and then I kind of zoom out to get a general idea of where I am on the map. That's not necessary for flying, it's just helpful. If you want to exit the game, you can go to the game option on one of these screens and either restart the mission or exit. That's an option. You have a lot of other options here that are covered in the tutorial, some of which actually aren't covered. You'll have to just experiment and learn, but none of that really matters for takeoff. So for takeoff, because we're in a VTOL plane, as you can see over there, we have our engines currently in a vertical position. They're aiming down, and you can see that on the tilt icon here. Hopefully you guys can see this on the heads-up display. It says tilt 90 and the arrow is pointing up. That means our engines are vertical, which if we hit the throttle right now, we'll fly straight up in the air, and not knowing about how to turn on autopilot and things like that, you'll probably tilt over and crash. So to change that, we want to grip the throttle using the grip button on the Vive, on the handles. So grip the throttle, don't lift it up because that will throttle. As you can see on this bar right here, that's the throttle going up and down. So leave it pushed all the way down. Use the touchpad while gripping it. So the up button on the touchpad is basically going to hit this tilt button right here. As you can see, it says tilt. So you push that, and you'll see this bar tilt, and this tilt goes to 0. Now our engines are rotated, as you can see back there. Okay, engines are rotated forward. Now we're going to do forward flight. We're going to keep our hand on the throttle, aiming down. We're going to turn on flaps to 2. So once you get your tilt forward, keep your throttle down, put your flaps to 2 for takeoff. Okay, now we want to turn off our brake lock, which is over here. As you'll see on the heads-up display, if it ever says brake lock in red, that's on your right side. Brake lock off. Okay, the brakes are off. We're going to slowly roll forward. It's not that big a deal. Just don't throttle up right now. You can also manually apply brakes with the left trigger while you're holding the throttle. As you can see, it's a pressure sensitive. So left trigger on the left hand while you're controlling the throttle. So if you want to stop, just hold that down. Now you want to use the grip button on your right hand to grab the stick. Left and right twist is your rudder pedals, and that'll basically turn you directly left and right. It won't roll you, it'll just turn you left and right. So on the runway, remember, just twist left and right, kind of in a vertical position, and that'll turn you. So we're gonna let off the brake. We're gonna slightly lift up the throttle, just barely lift it up. You'll see the throttle bar go up there in the bottom left. Just to slowly roll forward to the runway. Don't do it too much right now because you don't want to take off into a mountain. All right, now we're gonna apply some brake as we get closer to the runway. There are 2 runways here. If you miss the first one, you can take a left up on the next one. So we'll get out on the runway, and then we'll twist our hand left while slowly moving forward until we're generally lined up with the runway. You don't have to be right in the middle, but you want to be basically aiming down the runway. Now we're going to apply some brake. We're going to make sure everything's good. We have the brakes off. We have the flaps down to 2. Remember, that's for takeoff. You don't need them down, but it definitely helps with takeoff to have your flaps down. Now we're going to grab the throttle. We're going to let off the brake completely. We're going to pull up the throttle all the way to its max position. You'll start moving pretty quickly. You'll see your speedometer on the left side in meters per second. Once that gets up around 100, you can slightly pull back on the stick. Don't pull too far, and you'll take off. You'll get a beep. That just means your landing gear is down. Don't worry about it.
Landing gear.
Okay, now once we're in the air, keep the throttle all the way back so it's full power. You can release it with the grip button, and then grab your gear switch and flip that up. The gear will retract. As long as you're generally in the air, you can even let off the stick. And you'll slowly tilt, but you don't have to worry as long as you're not aiming at a building just for a few seconds to make adjustments. Just remember to get back on the stick. Just grip button to release it, grip button to grab it. You don't have to hold the button, just tap it. Tap grip to grab. And now we can angle ourselves down, up, you know, obviously it's like a joystick. Forward and backward is tilt, up and down, it's inverted, as joysticks typically are. If you would like to make an actual turn to the left, you want to roll left, and then once you're about 90 degrees sideways, pull back on the stick. You might lose some altitude while doing this, but it's good to start at a high altitude whenever making maneuvers. And you'll turn, and then once you're aiming the direction you want to be aiming, you roll back, tilt it to the right. If you'd like to do it just a general turn while staying level, you can rotate with the rudder pedals, which is rotate the stick left and right. If you have actual physical rudder pedals, you can use those as well with this game. Rudder pedals don't work super great at high speed though. They just give you a slight slow rotation to the left or right, but they can be useful in some scenarios. But again, the main thing for turning is tilt the stick left or right till you're sideways, and then pull back. And you can leave your hand off the throttle for pretty much the whole time if you want to while you're in the air. It helps if you're doing maneuvers. You can slow down sometimes. You can adjust it as you need to. You'll hear a thump sometimes. That's the afterburner. As you can see, let me get straight out for a second just so I can demonstrate this. So you have the throttle bar down there. If you have it up above that white line near the top, that kicks in the afterburners, which you'll see here, and you'll hear that thump. That's just the afterburners kicking in. For test purposes, it's fine to just max it out, go full speed. It does burn more fuel, so if you're gonna do a long mission, that might matter. But for now, don't worry about it. And again, we're slowly changing our direction when we have the stick off, but it's not that hard to realign yourself. Don't panic. Panicking is the thing that will get you, it'll make you crash. So if you're ever just starting to lose control slowly, just remember, you can take a second, reorient yourself, throttle over here, stick over here, kind of center the stick. You can see physically where it is depending on the hand. So if it's like this, it's like, oh no, you're turning, just kind of center it. And then look around. You have a head in VR. You can actually look out the window and see where the ground is. Sometimes it can be confusing if you're out to sea. If you're out in the ocean, you might not be able to tell the difference between up and down. But you have some other settings like the HUD. So if your HUD numbers are upside down like this, you know, 15 and 20, what? Those are upside down? Oh, that's because I'm upside down. There you go. Roll yourself around, and all is well. You have a bunch of numbers on here. These all give you important information, but for test flying, none of that really matters. It's just all about turning the airplane where you want to go and learning how the basic flying works. But yeah, there's a full tutorial in the game that's actually pretty helpful. I would suggest doing that if you want to learn everything about the game. But for now, this should get you in the air and at least experience flight. It's a really fun game once you get used to it. It can be a little daunting to figure out all the controls, and there's a whole lot of other buttons you can choose from, enabling flares and your fueling hook and stuff for mid-air refueling. There's a whole bunch of menu items, like you can turn on your targeting pod, power that on. And you can actually even mount this, let's see, yeah, to your head. So now I have the targeting pod attached to my my head camera. So you can actually like target things and zoom in, even, which is kind of crazy. You can zoom in with the camera pod on your head, no matter where you're looking, even through the bottom of the aircraft. I can like look through my feet and see a zoomed in image of the ground. That's more of an advanced feature. But for now, I'll turn that off, back to the screen. Yeah, and so that's basically it. That's everything you really need to know about it. You can also turn on weapons if you want to with the master arm switch down here. So you flip that up and then grab the actual switch, turn it on. Now the weapons are on. I'm on the cannon, which is set to the gimbal. The cannon will actually rotate. Well, when you're moving at slow speed, the camera will actually, or the cannon will rotate with the camera. When you're going high speed, it's stuck forward. If you push the right top button on your controller, basically the equivalent of this red button, so the button above your touchpad, you'll cycle between rockets, bombs, and cannon. And of course the trigger fires it. And bombs are a little tricky to demonstrate, but you should have I think you get a little indicator of bomb elevation when you're actually flying. Oh, I'm gonna stall. Oh, okay, I'm stalling now. Let's pull up. Yep. It's easy to, if you get too distracted for too long. Oh, I'm actually gonna die here. Well, it was good knowing you. Thanks for watching. I'm gonna eject. Ooh. Well, that didn't work. So again, like I said, no need to worry about crashing. You can always restart. But yeah, if you get too distracted for too long, that can happen. So it's always good to every few seconds just kind of look forward to see if you're flying straight down or stalling or whatever. So yeah, hope you enjoy the game. It might not be for everybody. If you don't enjoy it, it's not the end of the world. There are other games out there. This will at least get you in the air and get you the idea of the game, hopefully soon enough that, you know, if you really don't like it, you can always refund within 2 hours on Steam. So anyways, I hope you do enjoy the game, though. It's a really fun game. It's got a lot of options, and there's a whole mission editor for custom user missions as well, if you just kind of want to have endless fun shooting down aircraft or shooting ground targets. There's a bunch of enemy vehicles on the ground that can fire back up at you as well. There's a whole bunch of really cool mid-air dogfights. There's ships out at sea that can be, you know, hit with missiles, long distance anti-ship missiles with like GPS control and stuff on them. It's really complicated sometimes, but it's also really fun once you get used to it. Anyways, thank you all for watching this quick tutorial. This is VR Josh here, and I hope you have fun in the skies. See ya.